Satnam, everyone. Satnam, everyone. I am Reverend Reg, and today is June 5, 2021. It's 11 minutes past 11 a.m. here in Manila, Philippines. And it's such an exciting morning for me because I have one of my mentors in Unity, and I'm so excited because, she's about 11 hours. We're 11 hours ahead of her time, and she found time for us to be together today. So, just to give you a brief background of Reverend Shirley, she is the founder and spiritual director of Meditative Life Ministries and is a licensed Universal Foundation for Better Living, ordained minister, and she's also the minister director of the Great Lakes Transformational Empowerment Ministries, which helps hundreds of people break free from addictions and realize their divine potential. She's also the founder and minister director of Christ Universal Temple's Meditators for Better Living. And on top of all that, her accomplishments include that she was uh, part of honoring Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. Actually, she was the one who spearheaded the activity for her work and her ministry, as well as being the first African American to live on the grounds of Unity Village in Lee Summit. Unity's mayor and board of trustees honored Dr. Coleman with a proclamation making August 24, 2016 the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman Day at Unity Village. Reverend Shirley graduated with honors in 2007 from Trinity International University, earning a Bachelor of Arts degree in Organizational Leadership and Communication. She also received a Bachelor of Metaphysical Science, a bachelor's degree of Metaphysical Practitioner's Diploma from the University of Metaphysics in Sedona, Arizona. Good evening, Reverend Shirley. How are you today? Uh, Good evening, Reverend Shirley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, wonderful. Well, good evening. How are you,
I'm
Reverend?
doing great, and I'm so excited. Thank you for having me in your temple, in your group. It was such a
Yes,
fantastic experience for me. I love the family atmosphere of your ministry,
yes,
and I really admire the way that you set up the whole ministry where you talk about empowerment and lifting people's consciousness above the level of whatever personal limitations they're experiencing at the moment.
hmm,
And we both know it's such an important uh, mindset to get into, especially with what's happening right now.
right. Absolutely,
S-
absolutely. I'm
I want
I'm
to,
I'm excited that you uh, joined us, and just you are now a part of the family. It's a wonderful spiritual community of meditators where we learn metaphysical principles and meditate.
yes. And so it is. And by the way, Reverend Shirley, we have Dr. Ro Guzman, who's watching all the way from Manila, Philippines as well, watching from the comfort of my home.
Oh,
She was
wonderful.
saying,
Hello, Dr. Roll.
yeah, if you have questions, you can ask us later. So,
Okay.
anyway, Dr. Shirley, Reverend Shirley, rather, I want to ask you because, metaphysics is not exactly something that's very common here in the Philippines. A lot of people still get raised eyebrows asking, what is that all about?
Mhm, mhm.
But just to simplify things and to make people understand the practical value of it, what is metaphysics for you?
Well, for me, metaphysics is let's go with what that means. Meta is beyond, and physics would be the physical. And so, when one studies metaphysical sciences, they learn how to go beyond the physical, go beyond what they are seeing. And so, my whole idea of practicing metaphysical principles is to help not only myself, but others move beyond appearances. I feel that Jesus the Christ was probably one of the greatest metaphysicians that ever lived because he taught, judge not according to appearances, but judge righteously. So that means that we have to learn how to move beyond what the five senses can see, what we hear, smell, taste, and touch. And
Yes.
meditation helps us to move beyond those five senses into another realm that's never even been experienced. I mean, we have so much that we need to tap into, and you do that through practicing the presence, through meditation. So metaphysics, again, it is a science, and it's a science of mind whereby you move past and beyond the physical.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Shirley. And it's such a beautiful thing that you mentioned it because, like you mentioned, it's moving beyond the five senses. And we know that a lot of people are unconsciously hypnotized by what they see on TV or social media or whatever platform they're engaged with at the moment. And they think that whatever news they hear, that's actually the reality. So
Exactly, exactly.
and it's beautiful that you made mention of that because a lot of Filipinos who are watching you right now,
Mhm,
uh, when you talk about Jesus the Christ, Jesus still plays one of the major spiritual figures here in my country.
mhm,
And a lot of people, when they read the Bible, they take it literally. And we both know that it has gone through a lot of confusion because
mhm.
of taking a lot of things in the Bible literally. And for metaphysics, because you explained it earlier, it's going beyond the physical. And I just want to tie that up with your answer with, you have to understand that you have to go beyond your five senses, but at the same time, the Bible teachings that you just mentioned, for example, it still has a lot of relevance with what's happening to us today.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And you're so right about and it happens to all of us because I mean our five senses we need them, but we don't
Mhm.
want to. Uh, we have to understand that we're more than our five senses. We're more than this physicality, than this body, and we don't want to be navigated through life by our five senses. Can you imagine being navigated through life simply by your five senses and never tapping into that higher part of yourself, that God mind that is within you that can direct and guide you throughout your life?
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Shirley. It's a beautiful thing that you mentioned that because uh, we know that a lot of people go through this feeling of limitation, feeling fear, lack, and doubt, feeling they are hopeless in the situation because apparently they've been trained so long unconsciously in the mind that your situation right now, if it seems to be very problematic, it's only going to get worse from there.
It's
And
it, yes, it's only going to get worse because when you're fearing and you are locked into the appearances of things, you will never be able to move beyond it. And there are so many people in the world that have proven that you can move beyond your experiences and your challenges that you have in life. So many people have proven that it can be done. So it really boils down to that it's a state of mind, it's a state of consciousness that you have to have, that you rise above what you see. And you see, that's what faith is. Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things that you don't see. And we all have that gift of faith, but if we don't use it, just like a muscle, it atrophies. And so if you don't use your faith, you don't, God didn't give us this gift of faith to believe in what we see. We were given the gift of faith to believe in what we don't see.
It's such a beautiful thing that you mentioned, because we know that a lot of inventions actually came out of faith, out of persistence and perseverance. And a lot of people are not yet aware that when we talk about faith, this is actually one of the spiritual gifts that we were given.
Exactly. Exactly.
And this
And
is,
imagination,
yes,
which is what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. The mind power or the mind faculty of imagination, well, they all go hand in hand. When you say that people don't always realize that everything that you see around you, I mean, every single manifested thing has come from the invisible. Somebody was open and receptive to receive the idea. I tell my students, and they just said, wow. I said, just look around you. And if is there anything that you see in the physical that did not come from an idea? And they look around and said, oh, hey, if you can find something that did not come from an idea, let me know. Tell me. Well, nobody will ever be able to tell me that.
yes, yes, yes. And
Nobody will ever be able to tell us that.
yes, thank you for bringing that up, Reverend Shirley, because it's really a beautiful statement. It's a universal principle. And this is also the reason why I feel very strongly about honoring the Almighty Source, God, whatever name people want to call it. And I
Mhm.
like to honor that Source Almighty with what we have, which basically in Unity, we keep talking about honoring God with your first fruits, your time, the talents that you've been given, and at the same time, your treasure.
Yes.
And I'm bringing this up because we both share the same appreciation for this practice. And I remember myself when I first read the Catherine Ponder book.
Yes.
I'm gonna
Yes.
have to bring her up, Dr. Catherine Ponder's book, because many years ago, before I read her book, I felt I was enslaved to my circumstances and that my situation was hopeless. I felt
Mhm.
like I was never going to get out of whatever problems that I had at that time. Although I was a very persevering person, it just felt like it was harder, and it wasn't with the use of creative intelligence, because I
Mhm.
noticed with over the years of practicing it, honoring, source, infinite intelligence, whatever it is that you want to call it, it
Mhm.
somehow puts you in a creative space. I
Yeah.
noticed that you don't have to labor as hard just to get
Ex-
things done.
Exactly. Exactly.
Your
You're being guided.
effort Yes, and you're effortlessly connected to the right people. You have ample of resources, because I noticed, Reverend Shirley, a person can have a lot of material things or material wealth.
Mhm.
But if your material wealth is no longer the source of your peace of mind,
Mhm.
somehow you're going to have to let go of some of it.
Ah.
And that's why I love that training that I got from Unity, where I was taught that there's really a soul satisfying, emotionally fulfilling, and you delight in your material demonstration. You don't go into feeling shameful that you have that material wealth.
Exactly, exactly. It's funny
And
that you would mention that,
yeah,
because I was talking with a friend last night, and we were talking about the idea of receiving. And so many times, so many of us have problems with receiving. Those people that are givers often have problems with learning how to receive. And so I was sharing with her that all the people that you are only working one side of the law, of that spiritual law that says, if you give, you shall receive. But you're not working the other part to the law that says receive. And so you're off balance when you are only giving, 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 but you won't allow yourself to receive.
it's such a beautiful thing that you mentioned, Reverend Shirley. And I also want to ask you, I'm sure you have an idea how to differentiate it very well. Because a lot of people get confused when you talk about honoring the source, Almighty, Infinite Spirit, whatever name people want to call it, compared to the concept of giving for charity causes.
Mhm.
How are they? Of course, it's pretty obvious that it's going to nourish the recipient, but at the same time, they are also two different kinds of giving. And this is something that I want to hear from you, because a lot of different ministers have different experiences when it comes to differentiating how those two kinds of giving are motivated by different reasons. And as a result, they also return to you different kinds of results.
Yeah, first and foremost, you have to go from your intention. And if your intentions are right and you're giving from a pure heart, uh, then what you want to do, you find something or you become a part of a community that you believe in what they're doing and what they're teaching you. And so, and then most of us, have been raised with the Bible. You think about that scripture, Malachi 3:10, to bring ye the tithes into the storehouse. But tithe doesn't it's your time, like you said, it's your talent, and it is your money substance. I remember when I first started going to Christ Universal Temple under the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman in my 20s. I tell you, I remember when they passed the offering basket. I only had 50 cent to put in that basket, and I was
Mhm.
rather embarrassed because people seemed to be rich up in there, and I like, am I in the right place? But I kept giving what I had and what I could give, and then I just began to grow. And Dr. Coleman saw the growth in me and saw the potential and the possibility in me. And then I started giving in another way and of service, being of service. But I want to go back to what you're saying about looking to the source. Well, God is the source. By whatever name you want to call God, or whatever your traditional name is for God, that is the source. The God of your understanding is the source of your supply. In fact, God is the source of everything that you could ever need. We teach five basic ideas or attributes. There are five basic attributes of God: life, love, wisdom, power, and substance. Life, love, wisdom, power, and substance. And I ask my students, is there anything that you could ever need or want that would not fall under one of those basic ideas? Life is an idea in divine mind of activity. And it functions as wholeness and energy and spirit. And you need life. You want life, but you got something going on physically. You want to draw upon that life idea that is from the mind of God. Love. If you need love, there's nothing that we could ever want, need, or desire that we could not find under one of those attributes of God.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Shirley. And it's a beautiful thing. And I believe I also read it from Emily Caddy
Katie,
and
Katie.
KD. All right. And thank you for correcting that.
That's
Anyway,
okay.
that's life, love, wisdom, power, and substance,
Substance. Uh-huh.
which makes me retrace the steps that when you're not putting the Almighty first, that's where things get confusing. Because the opposite of it, and let me know what you think about it, it's death, uh, it's life, love, wisdom, power, substance. And to me, it's like saying that it's death, hatred, ignorance, powerlessness, and nothingness. And that's why
Yeah,
if you look at the opposite of it, especially your ignorance of that kind of law, it
mhm.
puts you in a cycle of, you know, never ending problems and drama.
Never ending. I think that there's a scripture that says we're destroyed by our lack of knowledge or our ignorance. You know, when you don't know who and what you are, you don't know who and what God is. You know, so many people they have been taught and believe that God is some man up in the sky with a beard and a pencil that's checking off everything that you're doing. Well, you know, and especially when I'm teaching people who know nothing about metaphysical teachings, and those people are the people that are in recovery and they're in these transformational homes and facilities that I'm going in and teaching them these true principles. And when I talk about that, they're just in awe. They're in awe. They think that, okay, you know, and I said, you know, forgive me if I burst your bubble, but God is not a man in the sky. I let him know that right off the bat. God is infinite intelligence. God is universal mind. God is spirit, not a man. And I said the only way God becomes a man is that he's in within you.
Yes, and thank you for sharing that, Reverend Shirley. And I want to tie it to what Dr. Ro just mentioned, because a few minutes ago, she was saying, "Go beyond the physical. What people are seeing, move beyond appearances." And I want to tie that to what we're discussing right now about honoring the Almighty, infinite intelligence, creative intelligence. That when you put faith and this creative intelligence together as your partner, this infinite intelligence, which is five attributes you mentioned,
Yeah.
which is life, love, wisdom, power, and substance.
Uh-huh.
If you tie it together, we end that cycle of creativity, of co-creation with the infinite intelligence in substance,
Mm-hmm.
which is contrary to what people think, that when you give off your time, your talent, and treasure in order to honor source, because a lot of people go through the cycle of going through the notions of fear, lack, and doubt, because they think that when they give, they're giving to nothingness. So nothing will
Yeah.
come back to them. But
That,
we know in our spiritual practice and our understanding that it doesn't go to nothingness, it just changes form back to the substance. So
exactly.
that you can experience your new good.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
realizing that you can have new and expanded good. It excites you to be of service, to give more of your time, and at the same time to generously share of whatever resources you have in the material plane, and knowing that it's also a form of divine protection.
And it's
Yes.
going to circulate right back to you. It's going to circulate right back to you. But when you talk about the people who are maybe stuck in a rut or a trap of fear and hatred and anxiety and all of those things, they're never going to, until they move out of that state of consciousness, they're not going to be able to be of service to anybody. Anybody. You got to be open and receptive to be a servant of God.
Thank you
And
for
I have found by being a giving of service and doing what I feel my higher God mind is directing me to do to help people, it returns to me pressed down, shaken together, and running over in so many ways.
Thank you so much for sharing it, Reverend Shirley. Especially, I want to ask you about generosity of spirit. That even if you're able to give something on the material level, it has to be coupled with your joy, with your
Yes,
pure desire that you're giving it, because it expands your joy to give it to another person. And why is generosity of spirit an important partner to giving your material wealth side by side?
Well, it's very important. Again, let's go back to sometimes when people give, they may give out of scarcity, out of a mindset of scarcity. So in that way, they're not really, really giving. But when you have a generous spirit, you are a giver and you will give on all levels, whether it's the money substance or it's your time and your talent, you will give. It won't be the first thing, money won't be the first thing that you are looking for. In my ministry, uh, even when I founded my ministry under Christ Universal Temple, I had that ministry for 6 years, and there was nothing. The only time that anything ever was given to me was when maybe some of my students gifted me something, but I did not get paid for that or anything like that. And even with this ministry, it's still growing. And I had to learn. Remember, I talked about sometimes you have a problem with receiving. Well, my board said, look, I went from having sessions once a month with this ministry in person once a month, and I went from once a month to every week. So after when the pandemic hit, we could no longer meet in person. So I had to be open and receptive as to how am I going to bring the message to the people? How am I going to feed the people? That was my main concern. How was I going to feed the people? Because I knew that we were all hurting through this pandemic and through all the other things that we have gone through in the past year. And so even I had to move past my fear, Reverend Branch, of technology. So God, what did God do? He gave me a group of people who are wonderful, who know more about technology than I do, and they have been assisting me. And so we went from once a month to every single week, where I do the conference calls and I do the monthly Zoom sessions, of which you so graciously attended and was a part of. And that's giving. My board had to say, look, you're working nonstop. We need to give you something. I was like, but I can't expand my consciousness if I don't learn how to receive. And so I'm learning how to receive. Again, though, with the spirit of generosity. If you believe in scarcity and lack and limitation, you're not really giving from a pure space. Do you know the author Gary Zukav?
Yeah,
Seed
yeah.
of the Soul. I remember reading one of his books years ago, and he talked about it was about giving. He said you should give the thing that you love the most.
Mhm.
That's something to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
I think about, oh my God, I love my jewelry. I love this jewelry, and it said give the thing that you love the most. Well, everybody can't do that. Everybody can't do that. But when you know that God is a source of your supply, it's easier for you to give from your heart.
Yes. And it's a beautiful thing that you Indeed, it's a beautiful thing that you mentioned, because this giving thing is not only something that we're talking about because we want to look good in the eyes of others, but number one, you want to maintain a healthy body, mind, and spirit, because even before metaphysics, Reverend Shirley, I also studied feng shui. And, I keep reminding people you can't have a brand new flat screen TV if you're not releasing your old bulky television set. I was 19 years old when I first had a feng shui consultation with a consultant. And although I was very spick and span in terms of organizing where to put things, and she was saying, you cannot expect something new and something good to flow into your life if you're not releasing anything. And it's the same with emotions.
Oh
That's
yes,
why that's
yes.
why it's so important to be joyful in the process of you doing the work that you want. Especially, I love that you mentioned about being of service. I want to highlight the amazing work that you have done for Reverend Johnny Coleman, because the president of International New Thought Alliance before was here, Dr. Blaine Mays, the late
Oh
Dr. Blaine
yes,
Mays.
yes. You know what? I went to the funeral festival ever since they brought it to Unity Village. So I've been the person who leads the morning meditations. And so right before Blaine made his transition, when we had lunch or dinner or something, he sat right next to me. We sat at the same table. He was just such a sharp dresser, and we just had so much fun talking to him. And then maybe a few weeks later, we heard that he had made his transition. A wonderful man, wonderful man.
Thank you for
And
sharing that, Reverend
you had
Shirley.
him on?
Yeah, I was the assigned person to be his chaperone during our sessions here in the Philippines with the rest of the members, and
Oh, wonderful.
he was such a beautiful person and such a beautiful soul.
Yes.
When he went here to the Philippines, he asked me to send an email back to the International New Thought Alliance telling everyone that he's fine. And I couldn't forget what he said about the Philippines, because he mentioned, please write that the Philippines is New York City in paradise. He had such a wonderful, energy that he brought to the group. He
He
was here.
shared.
Yeah.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yes. And I want to highlight the work that you have done for Reverend Johnny Coleman, because Reverend Shirley, every now and then, a new life coach or minister would ask me, what do you think sets apart ministers who are able to easily grow their ministries or maintain a loyal following compared to those who seem to be just like getting by every now and then. Sometimes they have a client and sometimes they don't. And then will just tell them my observation. And one of
Mhm.
the things that I have observed over the years, I told them, I noticed that those people who honor their teachers first, it seems like there's a cycle that
Absolutely.
it's just
Absolutely.
effortless for them to, attract more to themselves. Somehow, in that being of service, appreciating the ones that came before us. And this is something that I think is also part of the universal order, that
Yes.
there are certain people who actually pave the way for, the next batch of teachers or coaches to have an easier time. And I'm a really big fan of honoring teachers that came before me. Even our colleague, Dr. Cindy Palos, is also someone I see who has that kind of practice. Why do you
Mhm.
think is that practice important? Because I realized that it makes you more open and receptive. I just want to hear your observation.
Oh, I agree completely with you. It is so imperative and necessary that we honor those that have walked this path and gone before us, because without them, we would not have the things that we have. And I heard of ministers talk about, this was even like a fundamentalist minister, and I listened to him, and he would always talk about the seven keys. And one of the keys, he said that if you're not growing, and he was talking about it in terms of church or a ministry or pastor or something like that. He said it could be because somebody that you should be honoring that you are not honoring. See, the ego comes in when you don't feel in your heart to honor the person who opened the way and paved the way for you. And so, when I was attended Christ Universal Temple, which is under Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman's organization, the Universal Foundation for Better Living, uh, I was the founder minister director of the Meditators for Better Living. And so when I started the ministry, I started having retreats, meditation retreats. So we started in 2014. 2015, I had my retreat. 2016, I was looking for a place to retreat. And one of my committee members suggested Unity Village. Well, I didn't let it come out of my mouth, but my first thought was, I don't know if that's going to be conducive because I've always retreated at retreat facilities that were all inclusive with the food and nothing fancy, just those meditation retreat facilities. But I said, okay, let's check it out because I was remembering when Dr. Coleman took us there in '05, we had to stay in hotels. So when we got to Unity Village, when she pulled up, there was the retreat center. And I said, oh my God. When I walked in, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful. I said, oh my God. When I got the tour, I said, where's the contract? This is where I'm going to have my 2016 meditation retreat. Not knowing what God's plan was for me. So after I signed the contract and agreed, I decided that I would take a walk out to their meditation garden on the grounds at Unity Village. And I just so happened to be standing in the February or the month of love garden. And that's Dr. Coleman's birth month. And I heard this still small voice, we talk about the still small voice, which is your intuition. And it said, now I can tell you the real reason you are here. And I thought, oh my God, the real reason is that you will honor the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman with a plaque.
My God.
For being the first African American to live on the grounds of Unity Village. And the rest was history.
Amazing. And I'm so happy for you because not a lot of people get that. And I'm clapping for you because I think it's such a gift to be able to do that for a teacher, especially we know that Reverend Johnny Coleman really paved the way on so
Paved
many
the way.
levels. Yeah.
Paved the way. She was the first African American that was allowed to live on those grounds. And you know who was her classmate, Catherine Bonner.
Amazing.
Did you know
Amazing.
that? Did you know
No,
that?
no, I did not. But I remember Dr. Blaine Mays telling me I was younger than Dr. Catherine Ponder.
Uh-huh.
And so he was telling us that a lot of people are actually amazed at her writings. And he was so surprised when he came here because we know a lot about Dr. Catherine Ponder. And she was saying, you guys are so young to know her material.
Well,
And what he,
she actually was, if I remember correctly, the one who had a petition signed by all of her classmates. They signed a petition because Dr. Coleman was going to drop out of Unity Village Ministerial School because, she was not allowed to live on the grounds and it was just horrendous. And I was even thinking when we drove down there, I'm like, this was over 60 plus years ago. They didn't have air conditionings in the car. They didn't have none of this stuff. And even in the cold months. So it was Ponder who had the classmates sign a petition to have her move on the grounds, and that is what happened. And
wow.
they are planning in 22 to do something really, really, really great in honor of her. You see, if if you are full of ego, your ego won't let you honor those who paved the way for you. Your ego will tell you, oh no, you got what you got because of you. You don't have what you have because of you, because you don't have
Yes.
nothing. It's God that has it all. And and that honoring of someone, Reverend Reg, it goes back to your idea about service and giving. A giving person is going to be an honoring person.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Shirley, because it's something that I want to pass on as well, to the next generation. Because every now and then, someone will ask me, especially life coaching these days has become so popular.
Right, right.
And
Everybody wants to do it.
And I think the distinction of what the University of Metaphysics has is the service part of it. Your vows, for example, I think it's so important
Oh,
because
yeah.
your oath taking was also important to get you into action, especially when you feel that you're not really in the space, in that emotional space where you want to take action. Because having the vows for me was so important, because I know that there was an act of commitment that was going to be above the usual that I had before. And I'm very sure, like, the commitment that you showed during this pandemic, asking
Mhm.
yourself that, what am I going to do? How am I going to
Feed
give
the people.
this?
Hmm.
Yeah, please tell us more about it, because in the face of adversity, it's so important to have metaphysical ministers. And in fact, before the pandemic even happened, I came up with a coaching manual, and I really felt that metaphysical ministers will be more needed and will become a necessity.
Oh, yeah.
And aside from that, I want to ground it to making people realize that the oath taking is also an equally important commitment to it.
Hmm.
Because I think as a life coach, you're equipped significantly with the mind tools. But for me, you can have, the tools in your hands, but without that act of honoring what needs to be honored first, it can also confuse you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You won't even be able to utilize the tools that you have. Even those that have learned metaphysics, if they don't give of themselves to be of service to God, you can't use what you have, and then you're going to lose that. What is that saying? That to whom much is given, much is required. And I found a lot of people, and it's kind of sad to say, but a lot of people want to go through programs like the University of Metaphysics or whatever program they may want to go through because maybe they think it's easy or something because they put REV in front of their name. They don't realize REV means servant. It means
Yes.
that you
Yeah.
are employee of God, and God is the one that's going to. There's a great book called "A Work of Heart" by Reggie McNeil. A
Uh-huh.
Work of Heart. Now we had to use that book in our ministry and our ministerial program. Well, he talks about how God shapes the heart of a leader by using four of the greatest leaders: Moses, uh, 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 Paul, was Moses, Paul, uh, no, Moses, David, Jesus, and Paul. And even during the session, the class, we had to write a paper on which one are you, which one are you most like as a leader. And I felt I was more like David, more like David. But it's a great, great book that I think every leader, every reverend should read. A Work of Heart by Reggie McNeil.
Amazing.
Phenomenal book.
Beautiful. I'm excited to read it. And it's just an amazing thing to be reminded. Thank you for bringing it up, because I like the idea of being of service as well. Because I noticed that, I don't know, maybe it's because of the sign. I don't know if you're into astrology, but they say that certain
Yeah,
signs are,
I'm a
you know,
Capricorn.
you're, yeah, you
I'm
have
a
a certain
Capricorn.
inclination. Yeah, and that's why you're going to get your ambitions fulfilled. Because my former teacher, the late Dr. George Gison, Dr. Blaine Mays went here to the Philippines to give him an honorary doctorate degree.
Uh-huh.
And he received it because he was in service for about 30 plus years in Asia.
Yes.
And uh, I want to go back to what you said because you mentioned it's work of heart.
Yes.
And please tell us more about it. Especially, you mentioned your leadership style is more of David's leadership style because I'm not really familiar.
Oh, now you ask me to go back and really recall and pull up that book. Well, that when you think about Moses as a leader, the type of leader that he was, he was strong and all of that. But David was kind of quiet and unassuming, so to speak. And that it was like a gradual growth for him. Jesus, well, you know what type of Jesus leader Jesus was. Jesus, you can tell we didn't know where. He left off where he left off and where God was, because he was God in expression to the ultimate degree. And Paul, of course, he was like, he had to be blinded. He was a rebel, so I didn't go around like, you know, chopping people down because of what they believe in. So yeah, I felt like I was more like the the gradual approach to leadership. When I look at my life, um, God was shaping my heart and preparing me for leadership. I can recall years ago when I was just a licensed teacher. I was invited to help this one minister out that had her ministry, in one of her apartments. And I lived like maybe 40 minutes or so away from this place. And so in rain, sleet, and snow, I would come and teach the students. Well, there was one time where there were never any more than maybe 10 students or something like that. But there was even one time it was just one student. But I persevered and I did it because the thought that came to me was that if I'm faithful with this, I know that God is going to send more people. In fact, there's an article that was written by a Kabbalah master. I forget his name, but it was an article about service. And he said the more people you serve, the more people God will send to you to serve. So I knew that even with just these 10 students, and even that five or four or that one student, I was actually really honing my skills and my ability to teach. It was just being, God was shaping me and crafting me. I never would have known if somebody had said 20 some years or so ago, well, you're going to have a ministry. Well, in fact, somebody did tell me that, and I kind of looked at them. But you're going to have a ministry, and so that one, that five, that 10 has now turned into hundreds. But it's because I was faithful in the little.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a beautiful thing to be reminded, especially metaphysics is such a fascinating subject to talk about. And
Mhm.
I love that you talked about, if you're faithful in the little, sooner
Yes.
or later it's going to increase and multiply. And because quality always comes first before quantity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes.
I'm,
And
I'm going to have to get that article to you because it's such a powerful article. I always use it when I'm teaching and I talk about being of service. And it's such a wonderful feeling. Like when I go and teach the women and the men in recovery, there's no money involved in that. I mean, I have to sometimes, get money to get gas to get there to teach them. There's no money involved in that. And I've been teaching people in recovery since 2003.
wow.
And when I do that, it's such a good feeling for me. It's such a good feeling for me when I open myself up and give and teach people. These are people who need it. They've never heard of metaphysics, but they're so open and receptive to receive it. There's never been a time that since 2003 that I have taught a class that it wasn't the best class ever because they
Wow.
were so open and receptive. And many of them, they come back every year for their alumni. They are extremely successful, more
Thank you for
successful
sharing
than
that.
me.
Yes, it's such a beautiful thing because you're giving them a lifeline, and especially to be able to look ahead into their future and be able to reverse whatever it is that has, you know, gotten them into the space where it will compromise their dignity or whatever it is that made them decide and made them think that life was very limited. And thank you for doing such beautiful work, because I know that it can also be emotionally draining as well. But I'm happy that you're coming from a place where you're telling us that it's so fulfilling for you to do,
It,
especially.
yes, my God, Reverend Branch, it is so fulfilling. Again, if someone had told me 30 plus years ago that I would have such a ministry and that I would love it, I would have looked at them like they had four eyes. Because my first husband made his transition due to a drug overdose. And I never wanted to have anything to do with people on drugs. Never would have thought it. But when I was called to do the work and to teach them spiritual principles, I knew I was doing the right thing. And I said, yes, yes, I will do. Yes, I will do. And my life, I was just talking about 6 grandchildren. Three graduated this year, one from college, and he's actually well on the way to be an NBA basketball player, and two granddaughters that graduated from high school. And I was just talking to one of my daughters, and I said, I feel that the work that I have done as being of service to God, I feel that my family has been blessed because of that. Not one of my grandchildren is on drugs or been in jail or had any type of problem. They're brilliant people. I feel like it's because there's some blessings that's happened because I was obedient and did. I know that they have their own soul things and all of that, but I still feel we're all connected. And if you are doing good, then that good trickles down into your family's line.
Yes, yes, yes. Sorry, I feel so excited with what you said because people think that this is ancient wisdom and that it's probably just one of those things that we've been conditioned. But I do believe in what you're saying because when I talk to our friends who are weekend practitioners and they have this process of honoring the ones that came before and the process of life. And it's such a beautiful thing that you brought it up because those things, I don't want my generation, especially me, to forget
Mhm.
those essential things.
Oh yeah. And when we honored Dr. Johnny Coleman, so it was a whole day of honoring. So the first part was honoring Dr. Johnny Coleman. The second part was, and this was all ideas that I received that God just gave. The second part, I wanted to have a candle lighting service that would honor all of the pioneers of the New Thought movement. And so
Wow.
what we did, they set up candles all over the Silent Unity Chapel. And people, so we had names. So like Charles Fillmore, Myrtle Fillmore, all of these people that have passed on from UFPL and from Unity. It was so powerful. So people would reach into the basket and pull a name out, and whatever the name, then you would go and say, "I'd like this candle for."
Oh,
Um,
that's beautiful.
it's a beautiful, beautiful service. Maybe you might want to do that one day. It's a beautiful service. I remember when we did it in '05 at Unity Village. I pulled Ralph Waldo Emerson, so I had to light the candle for Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Wow. I love it. It's such a beautiful practice. And I want to highlight on what you mentioned earlier, especially you mentioned that, whatever service portion that you have given to others, you feel that it also benefited your family. I had
Oh
such a strong
yes.
reaction to it because those things, it's really true. I also felt that way because most families, I think it's because people have become so materially aware that we
Mhm.
no longer sense anymore that the spiritual practice that one of your family members might have is also adding to the spiritual bank account of the family. I believe in
Yes.
that those people who are of service in some form of spiritual work, here in the Philippines, they most people would relate spiritual work with religious work. It
Mhm.
has so much value and it does bring light to the rest of the family members. Please explain more about it, Reverend Shirley, because a lot of our listeners will actually, appreciate it because it's a practice here in the Philippines, but it's not commonly discussed.
It's not common. Well, it's probably not even common in here, but from my experience and just from my observation of my life and the life of my children. Now, I was a single parent because my first husband made his transition due to a drug overdose. And even when I married the second time, that was a situation that did not work out either. Um, so it hasn't always been a bed of roses. But I just recall answering the call to be of service in both teaching and teaching the people in recovery. I just knew and I felt deep in my heart that if I do this, I will be blessed. Not only will I be blessed, but my seed will be blessed. My family, my children. We see, we all came here and we chose our parents. Maybe some people may not be able to accept that and say, oh, well, I would have chosen, somebody that, rich parents. But you choose what you need for your growth. And but as a family unit, we're all together to help each other heal. And if my living and being of service to God is going to trickle down and be a blessing for my family, then here I am, Lord, send me.
Wow, it's very beautiful, Reverend Shirley. I totally resonate with it because I have noticed that those people who are of service in their God of understanding, as you would mention, in whatever faith they are part of, I noticed that indeed members of the family do get the breaks they want in their careers, or
Mhm.
money is more stable and sustainable for them, something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So those are the things that I just observed, of course, but it's always nice to hear a perspective from someone who also has incredible experience.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I thank you so much, Reverend Shirley, and thank you, Vernon. It's so nice to have both of you uh, at the backstage earlier. And
Yeah.
here in my show, In Perspective, Reverend Shirley, I always ask my guests, in as much as we talked about so many things, what is that one perspective that you want to leave with me and the rest of the viewers for today? Because I want to have you back again for
Oh,
another
yeah. Yeah.
interview.
We have to come back. Um, but when you to answer a question like that, we have to look at what the theme was throughout the whole conversation. because I
Yeah.
think we even went further. We went into further things that we didn't even discuss that we would be going into.
Yeah.
And so the theme that kept coming up is service.
Yes.
That's the perspective. Be of service. See, when you of service, you are allowing the energy and the spirit of God to just use you as a vehicle, as a channel to bless and heal and prosper others. And so if you blessing somebody, you know God's got to bless you. God can't bless, if I'm blessing you, God can't use me as a channel to bless you and you don't bless me.
Yes.
So
Wow.
if there's anything to be left because of that kept coming up from you, service and
Yes.
honoring, service and honoring.
Thank you so much, Reverend Shirley. I'm glad that we see each other eye to eye with it because it's such a beautiful thing. For me, it's like a piece of art that there's a certain pattern to it. So because you're starting with the highest possible energy, the rest just gets taken care of.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know if it makes sense to our viewers, but I just observed it for many decades because my friends and I, we have very different spiritual beliefs. But I just noticed that people of different, who have a variety of belief system, when they come together and they talk about things like this, it's so beautiful because it does sprinkle that radiant energy into other areas of their lives. And like what you mentioned earlier, no matter how chaotic initially things may be, but when you decide to be of service and to honor the source, whatever concept of source you have, it there's a domino effect for the rest of your
yeah,
family members. And
yeah,
who
yeah.
wouldn't want that, right?
Who wouldn't want that? But
All right.
you gotta come out of the self-centeredness in order
Yeah.
to be of service.
Yes.
You can't be self-centered.
Thank you so much, Reverend Shirley, for that. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It's such an amazing thing to have this discussion with Reverend Shirley Lawson. A lot of people ask me, why do metaphysical ministers keep talking about universal principles and good deeds and honoring God and being of service? Because one of the things that's so important for us to realize is that no matter how difficult or limited you think things may seem at the moment, it's temporary, especially if you realize that the matter is just actually something that came out of an idea. So if you had ideas that were very limited and fearful, that's what you're going to manifest on the physical plane. So if you want to reverse it, you're going to have to apply a lot of the things that Reverend Shirley mentioned earlier about honoring the Almighty, honoring the ones that came before, and at the same time being of service. I totally resonate with her. And I encourage everyone to visit Meditative Life Ministries. So, Reverend Shirley, if there's uh, any activity, because I'm so excited that Meditative Life Ministries is already 4 years old. Please tell us more
Yes,
about
yes.
it. And can people attend the celebration? What do they need to do?
Well, what what they can do is email email us at meditative life ministries at gmail.com. Meditative Life Ministries at gmail.com and request to be put on our mailing, on our email list. And every week, I have someone who sends out the emails every single week of every session that we're having. And the anniversary is going to be via Zoom. And so it's going to be a virtual anniversary. And I have two Unity ministers that will be speaking. Our theme is it's always a healing theme for my anniversary. So the healing theme is healing through the five basic principles, healing through the omnipresence of God, the divinity of humankind, the value and power of thought, healing through practicing the presence, and healing through the law of demonstration. It's going to be so powerful. We have Reverend Alberta Ware, whom you met her. We have Reverend Sandra Campbell from Unity on the Plaza. Myself, I'm going to speak to healing through the value and power of thought. And Reverend Tim Lytell, who is from Unity in Moran, California, and Reverend Vale Leonard, who is from Baltimore, Maryland. So it is going to be exciting. It's going to be so powerful. And we will have a healing service at the end. So, you know, how when you have a healing service and you're in person, you know, you can, you know, take the hand of the people at the end of the room, another minister, and you can transfer and transmit that healing energy. You're that channel, but you have
Yes.
to do it via the airwaves now. So that's going to be exciting.
Thank you for that, Reverend Shirley. And I encourage all the listeners to, give time for it, because I noticed that a lot of the content that Reverend Shirley and the rest of the members of Meditative Life Ministries, it's mostly about personal development and empowerment. You know,
Yes,
a lot of us, we spend a lot of money on workshops like this, but one of the things that I learned from Dr. Catherine Ponder, she was saying, if you really want your success to have a permanent, enduring basis, it has to be rooted in spirituality, realizing your oneness with the infinite. And that's why I love the work of Meditative Life Ministries. I'm so grateful, Reverend Shirley, that you made time for us today. Because, imagine if you feel so hopeless already, who do you turn to? And if
yeah,
you have erroneous ideas about God, then you also have erroneous coping ways of dealing with your personal life.
absolutely, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. It all begins with God. So when you have anything, like you said, erroneous thoughts about God, you know, I won't use the word ideas because we teach that all ideas come from God, so there's no bad ideas. So it's just these erroneous thoughts that people
yeah.
have, you know, and beliefs that they've been, you know, taught to believe. And so if you have these erroneous thoughts about God, you definitely gonna have erroneous thoughts about yourself because you don't know who and what God is, and you don't know who you are.
Yes. And thank you so much for the amazing work that you do. It's such a fantastic experience when you're part of it. I've been there,
Yeah,
and it's
we
such an
appreciate that.
amazing, it's so beautiful because you need partners. I tell everyone that you need partners to help you sustain your metaphysical practice, because
Absolutely.
especially when we talked about Florence Scovel Shinn and the discussions
Yes,
of Dr.
yes,
Masters,
yeah.
you need people who can actually relate to you and at the same time are committed to practicing the teachings.
So
Thank you so much,
thank
Reverend
you.
Shirley, for your time. It has been such a beautiful experience for me having this conversation. It was an enlightening experience.
Oh,
So,
it was so beautiful. And I thank you for inviting me and for having me. It was just such a beautiful experience for me. And we want to thank Vernon for helping me with the technology too.
yes, yes. Thank you
We'll
so
try to
much.
have better lighting the next time. So
Yes.
I look
And so
forward
it
to it.
is.
And so it is. God
Thank you
bless.
so much and have fun.
All right.
Mabuhay everyone, and remember to live your life fully, and at the same time make sure to put things in perspective, because your perspective shapes your reality. So, Satnam everyone, mabuhay and have fun.